Tolo Olubajo is an associate professor at the Department of Political Science, University of Lagos, an adjunct professor at the Department of Politics and Governance Studies, the University of Gondar in Ethiopia. Professor Olubajo is a senior research fellow at the Department of Political Science, University of Lagos, an adjunct professor at the Department of Politics and Governance Studies, the University of Gondar in Ethiopia. Professor, I'm hearing myself speak. Is a senior research fellow at the Department of Political Science, University of Lagos, an adjunct professor at the Department of Politics and Governance Studies, the University of Gondar in Ethiopia. Professor John, can you let me check what's happening? I can hear myself in the loop. Hello? At the Department of Political Science, University of Lagos. Okay, that was scary. Thank you for sorting that out. So I take Professor Dubajo's profile again. He is an associate professor at the Department of Political Science, University of Lagos, an adjunct professor at the Department of Politics and Governance Studies, University of Gondar in Ethiopia, and a senior associate at the South Africa Chair Initiative. His teaching and research interests are international relations and comparative politics. He was a student of Professor Kayode Soremekun at the Department of International Relations at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, and later his colleague at the Department of Political Science, University of Lagos. Let's make welcome Dr. Tola Odobajo. Thanks for joining. And I would introduce a very dear senior friend and colleague, Professor Jeremiah Shola Omotola. Professor Omotola, a former Deputy Vice Chancellor at the Federal University Oye-Ekiti, obtained his PhD in Comparative African Governance and Politics from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. He's currently a professor of political science at Foye, where he is the director of the research and development, as well as the head of the Department of Political Science. He was recently a visiting professor at the Beirut International Graduate School of African Studies, University of Beirut, Germany, and he previously worked as a consultant in the Office of the Director General and the head of the Social Political Unit of the Department of Research and Training at the National Institute for Legislative Studies, Abuja. Professor Montola has varied interests, but amongst his interests include oil and environmental politics in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, security and post-conflict peace building, and development studies. He has many publications in reference books and journals, including African Affairs and Commonwealth and Comparative Politics. Professor Montola has almost 200 publications to his credit and over 3,365 citations. As a matter of record, in 2016, Professor Motala was named the most cited social science scholar in Africa. Can we make welcome Professor Shola Omotola to this distinguished platform? I would like to introduce our distinguished keynote speaker for today. He's currently in South Africa, and it told me that he might delay in joining us because of internet issues and some other responsibilities he has, but I will introduce him nonetheless. And that is Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador Joe Keshi has over 35 years working experience in the highest level of government, serving as the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He also served as the permanent secretary of the Cabinet Secretariat at the Presidency, the Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of Nigeria at The Hague, and the Consul General of Nigeria in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. Ambassador Keshi holds a BSc in Political Science from the University of Ibadan, an MA in Administration and Development from the Institute of Social Studies at The Hague, the Netherlands, and a postgraduate diploma in International Relations and Diplomacy from the Institute of International Affairs, Lagos. He was a former chairman of the United Bank for Africa, UBA, and is currently the Director General of BRASED, that is the Bayelsa Rivers Akwa Ibom Cross River Edo and Delta Commission, a socio-economic development organization of the 6 South-South states, as well as the president of the retired career ambassadors of Nigeria. I'd like us to make welcome Ambassador Joe Keshi in absentia. Now, finally, from my hand, I'd like to recognize the distinguished presence of our honoree for today. He messaged me a while ago that he had certain challenges joining, so I'm hoping he's able to resolve that soon. But I would also introduce him in as absentia. Professor Kayode Soremekun is a man of many arts, but what we will be celebrating him for today is as a distinguished scholar, public intellectual, editor, and as the former Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Ekiti. His career reflects a rare blend of academic excellence, visionary leadership, and national service. He has attended some of the most respected academic institutions over the course of his educational journey. He began at the renowned King's College, Lagos, before earning his bachelor's degree from the University of Ife, now known as the Obafemi Awolowo University, in 1976. He went on to complete his master's and PhD in international relations from the same university in 1979 and 1984, respectively. To deepen his academic and global perspective, Professor Soremekun completed a postgraduate diploma in international law and development at the Institute of Social Studies in The Hague, and he undertook a postdoctoral research at the University of Maryland, College Park in 1991 with a focus on American public and foreign policy. He is a graduate of both English and History and International Relations, and he completed his doctorate in record time. Professor Kayode Soremekun focuses on Nigeria's petroleum policy, Nigeria's foreign policy, and the global political economy. He also holds a certificate in American foreign policy and a postgraduate diploma in international law. He most notably served as the Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Ekiti from 2016 to 2021, where he led a bold transformation of the institution. As a matter of fact, he was the second substantive Vice Chancellor of the university, and during his tenure, about 11 additional faculties were established in the university. Under his stewardship, Foyer expanded its academic offerings from 22 to 63 fully accredited departments, and he launched the postgraduate and distance learning programs at Foyer. I could go on to reel out the profile of this great and wonderful intellectual that we are gathered to celebrate today, but one of the things that will suffice for this forum is that Professor Kayode Soremekun currently serves as the Africa Chair of the Research Development Group of the American Political Science Association. We have some of his colleagues from APSA joining us today, and he has been very strongly affiliated and still teaches at the Lagos State University. So with this, I would like to welcome us all to this roundtable celebrating the life, the works, and the mentoring legacy of Professor Kayode Soremekun. I'm Tobiloba Adeomi. I teach and study Global Africa, specifically U.S. Africa Foreign Relations at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And right about now, I'll hand over to the host, Dr. Toby Oshodi, to introduce our distinguished chair for today's event and proceed with the event. Over to you, Dr. Oshodi.
Thank you, Toby. Probably I'll be calling you namesake throughout this event. And thank you. It's an honor to be part of this conversation, which is rare. rare to the extent that, there is little time intellectuals, come together to celebrate one of their own. And that is one of the things we are doing. So it's actually a pleasure. It's also an honor for me to, perform a miracle of introducing the chair of our conversation this evening, His Excellency Dr. Kayode in less than 5 minutes. Dr. Kayode is a distinguished Nigerian statesman, scholar, and global thought leader, policy, governance, and the academia. As pioneer president of the Forum of Regions of Africa, FORAF, he coordinates leaders from over 20 African countries, advancing continental cooperation in line with the African Union's Agenda 2063, and of course the United States SDGs. He is also a visiting professor at King's College London and the co-founder of Amandla Institute for Policy and Leadership Advancement in Abuja, Nigeria. He served 2 terms as governor of Ekiti State between 2010 and 2014 and 2018 and 2022, within which time he championed governance reform, rural development, industrial infrastructure. As Nigeria's Minister of Mines and Steel Development between 2015 and 2018, he repositioned the mining sector and chaired the Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, NIAIT. He was also chair of the Nigeria Governors Forum between 2019 and 2022, and a presidential aspirant in 2022 under the APC primaries. Dr. Fayemi holds degrees from the University of Lagos, Obafemi Awolowo University, and King's College London, specializing in history, international relations, and war studies. His research spans constitutionalism, democratization, and security sector reforms, advising governments and multilateral institutions. A best-selling author and mentor, he is recognized for his integrity and impact in public service. He is married to Erelu Bisi Adeleye Fayemi, a women's rights activist, and they have a son. I invite you to welcome our chair for the occasion, who have been informed is actually traveling, but if he can, make time to join us to just share some of his ideas with us for the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, I've managed to join you, maybe not for too long, but I am delighted to be part of this conversation evening where I am, but I know it may not be so in other places where people are joining us from. But it's really a delight and a pleasure for me to join this celebration of someone I've known for almost 40 years. I first met Professor Kayode Soremekun as a graduate student in the Department of International Relations when I came in there in 1986. He was, I think he had already rounded up his PhD at the time, or just about doing so. I'm not too sure now, but I met him in the department then when I believe Dr. Laya Begurin was the head of department when I came in 1986. And Professor Soremekun was on the faculty as a lecturer. I didn't actually have the privilege of being taught by him as a student, but he was one of those scholars who you can't miss his presence in the faculty, particularly in the faculty seminars. And as graduate students, we always look forward to the intense debate that used to take place in the Obafemi Awolowo University in those days between the likes of Professor Soremekun, Professor Julius Ihonvere, Professor Toyin Falola. These are the generation of scholars that have gone on to distinguished career in academy and in public policy. But I also then had the fortune of being governor when Professor Soremekun came Chancellor of the Federal University, or Ekiti, a university which actually started life on my watch in 2012 when President Jonathan decided to set up federal universities in states without federal universities. Incidentally, I had proposed an Ekiti man as Vice Chancellor of the university at the time, Professor Bolaji Aluko from Howard University in the United States. But in the wisdom of Professor Jonathan's team, they decided to relocate Professor Aluko to Federal University in Otuoke in President Jonathan's village and brought Professor Nebo, I believe Professor Chinedu Nebo, as the pioneer vice chancellor in Federal University, Oye Ekiti. But Professor Soremekun was the first vice chancellor there in that university that I was most familiar with and worked closely with when he was there as vice chancellor. And the meteoric rise of that university is not unconnected with the arduous effort he made in expanding the intellectual and academic content of the university, as well as the physical expansion of the campus of the campuses of the university at both Ikole and Oye Ekiti. On a personal level, I have worked and watched Professor Soremekun's activism. That's a part of him that has not been reflected in the introduction made. Yes, we're celebrating him as an intellectual giant, but one could also recall the role he played as a guerrilla journalist myself. I used to admire the editorial work that he and his colleagues did in AM newspapers, and his previous work before then in The Guardian, and I believe The Times, and Business Day subsequently. He's always been an intellectual gadfly in that regard, confronting the powers that be in very difficult circumstances that we can all recall now that we're in what I've continued to describe as civilian rule, with aspirations of becoming a true democracy. You scholars, you tell us the criteria that a true democracy should have. And if we go by what is in Freedom House or Mo Ibrahim Governance Index or any of such measures, well, democracy is a journey. We're still on that journey, and hopefully we would attain full measure. But coming back to the subject of our celebration, everybody claims to have been part of that struggle to bring Nigeria to this point in our historical trajectory. But clearly, that is an area in which not enough of the work done by the likes of Professor Soremekun has been acknowledged. And I believe even as we look into his intellectual peregrination over the years, it would also be necessary to connect his accomplishments in the gown with his efforts in town, so to speak, if we're to have a robust assessment and a full measure of the man who we have all gathered here this day to honor. What remains for me to say as I look at the outline that we have here is that the organizers have chosen excellent hands. Almost everyone that I see here, I have heard of or known personally or read their contributions to scholarly record. And I know that we are in for a very, very interesting discourse on the theme that the organizers have chosen. The world is an egg, Nigeria is a spoon. I wouldn't go into any philosophical unraveling of that metaphor. That's not my responsibility this day. All that I would say is that I know that those that have been chosen have been carefully selected, and I know that they will give a good account and connect whatever they're going to tell us to the person we're celebrating this day, Professor. Incidentally, my namesake, I forgot that. My mom, Professor Kayode Soremekun. I look forward to an interesting discourse by all our participants and a robust keynote address from a man I've worked with from his days in the Sierra Leone Civil War and his work on the Lome Peace Accord. To his work recently in Brace Commission that has just been mentioned by the moderator, Ambassador Joe Keshi. So I look forward to your presentation, Ambassador Keshi, and I know that there's bound to be a lot of gems. We look forward. Unfortunately, we're going to miss you at our ECOWAS at 50 event tomorrow in Abuja, but I know that these are matters that you are still very much interested in and concerned about, and listening to you today might inform what we'll also do tomorrow in that ECOWAS reflection of leaders. Thank you, organizers, for having me here. I congratulate our honoree for his service to humanity, not just his contribution to academia and to intellectual output, but really his service to humanity and service to Ekiti State. He's not from our state, but that university now ranks amongst the most cited in the country. And being a university in my own local government, charity begins at home. I must thank him for the work he and others like Professor Shola Omotola have been doing in raising the bar for Federal University of Ekiti. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. You've actually laid a foundation for this intellectual conversation. We're still trying to get Ambassador Joe Keshi to join us. But what we plan to do is to, because there's also a context,
I have joined you, by the way.
Oh, sorry. Then we can have...
And I listened to the chairman's, as always, interesting statement and comments.
Excellent, sir. We can then proceed to your talk. But I think with the permission of His Excellency, the Chair, I'm going to be a democratic dictator. So we would ensure you stick to that time that you have. You have 20 minutes to give your keynote address, sir. Thank you so much. You have the floor, sir.
Oh, me. All right. Thank you. becoming a democratic dictator is not strange anymore with Donald Trump in the United States. So I guess we are going to grow so many as we go along. My respect to His Excellency, who has delivered his opening remarks. And sir, nice to see you again. My congratulations also to the man we are celebrating today. I've had cause to read him over the years, and I've also had cause to, we met a couple of times. I think in addition to what the chairman has said, all I could add, given how much I criticize the universities today, is the fact that he belongs to a generation of scholars that we no longer, or that does not exist in Nigeria anymore. So we hope someday that we can recruit, those kind of scholars. I thank the organizers for inviting me, and I look forward to a very interesting and robust engagement. But for my own contribution, let me start by saying that, incidentally, this morning, I had to make breakfast for my wife and I and the grandkids who were rushing away to school. And I cracked some eggs, and I had a spoon in my hands, And as I turned the eggs, of course, I started reflecting. I said to myself, oh, this is what I'm going to speak on today. I hope that doing this morning will be an inspiration as I try to understand the context in which the topic was selected. But the reality for me is that I actually have more questions. And I sincerely hope that other discussants will take into account some of the issues and provide an answer to my concerns. My first question, talking about Nigeria, is how is Nigeria posed for defense of our interests and projections of influence in an emerging emerging new global order? How is Nigeria posed to capture, to compete and collaborate or repair hostile forces and create space to function and exert herself? So if you look at the global scene or the emerging model that we have, which is a little bit dynamic and confusing, we have the disintegrating post-World War II order with new centers of regional and global influence. In the mix, you have radical nationalist or isolationist tendencies with inherent cultural and xenophobic undercurrents are seen in Brexit, right-wing tides in Europe and the US. The institutions that we have today, particularly the United Nations, is becoming weaker than we have seen in the years. You also have WTO, and the fact that very few of the global accords, like the climate agreements, are being observed. You have a external relationship of the United States, and that in itself is part of what the new world order that we are seeing, or the emerging new dynamic situation. On the other hand, you also have closer home, you have growing Russian influence in the sub-region. You have the internationalization of regional conflicts in the DRC and the Sudan. And then despite regional mechanisms like the AU, the ACFTA, as well as old crumbling, metropolitan relationships, African countries are still individualistic in struggling to rely on external support and imports, particularly on Russia, via Russia. You have increasing search for critical minerals, of which Nigeria possesses some. Therefore, the question is Nigeria ready, willing, and able to defend and promote her interests with credible, coherent, and effective foreign policy, along with appropriate structures and actions? Is she capable of emerging effectively? To some extent, I believe so, bearing in mind that, and I ask this question because, as we like to say, foreign policy itself is a reflection of the domestic policy. And your ability to operate a credible, assertive, and effective foreign policy depends on your situation at home. You cannot have a weak home base and you decide to, pursue an ambitious foreign policy. That's almost impossible. So the government's renewed hope agenda preceded some robust foreign policy, postures to promote it under our subsisting foreign policy imperatives in the 1999 Constitution for developing Nigeria that is able to hold its peace within the Committee of Nations. The president, to his credit, has been active at the international fora, making necessary gestures, building economic ties, and promoting Nigeria interests. But given the limited financial clout, domestic security concerns, and the changing global pattern of relationships, again, my question is, are we able to make much impact? Are we able to have a seat at the table where critical regional and global issues, decisions are made? Like we had, in the days or the years gone by, where there was a time in our history, the history of Nigerian foreign policy, particularly on African issues. Nigeria was always consulted before decisions are made when it concerns Africa. But in the last couple of years, that has become an old story. So the question is, are we in a position today for the world to take us seriously or recognize us as a leader to be able to go back those old days in which we are consulted when it comes to, issues concerning Africa? In other words, do we still have that capacity to engage in global peacekeeping efforts and allied endeavors? Bear in mind that at some point in time in our history, I think we were number 2 or number 3 after India when it comes to peacekeeping. I'm not too sure we are able to do that anymore when you consider where, our troops, the situation that our troops our soldiers or our military find themselves today, where they have basically gone, they are now doing more of internal security, that is the purview of the police than, defending the territorial integrity, and security of Nigeria. On the economic front, before then, rather, what actually today qualifies us? Many years ago, we were confident, very confident, and fought hard enough and believed that if a decision was to be made as to which of the countries in Africa would occupy the proposed, reform of the Security Council to expand its membership, to some extent, we are confident that Nigeria could honestly argue its way to becoming a member of that Security Council. But as things are today, do we still have that confidence that we can be part of that Security Council? Can we get a seat? Are we economically strong enough? And is the economic reform, will its effects be enough to make us globally competitive and to give us an edge in comparison to our competitors like South Africa and Egypt and Algeria and the rest of them, and even Morocco? So these are some of the questions that I believe that we need to ask ourselves. But more importantly, we also have to think about the institutions we have in Nigeria that are concerned or that deal with foreign policy. You have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you have the intelligence agencies, you have the economic institutions and things like that. Today, do they have that capacity? For the foreign ministry, 2 years into the life of this administration, we do not have ambassadors anywhere in the world. And when you talk to people in the ministry today, the ministry is far, far more weaker than I have ever seen, since I joined the ministry. Myself and myself will be celebrating this year 50 years when we joined the ministry as new rookies after we left the university. And the question becomes, is the government able to pay attention to the situation in the ministry? Or let me put it the other way, how do you conduct a foreign policy when you are not paying attention to the institutions or to the key institution that you expect will execute your foreign policy? It's simply the same thing when you look at the Nigerian civil service. So the position of the ministry alone is not even an issue. It's just the whole of the Nigerian public service that it is not as strong as it used to be because it's been weakened, with due respect to our chairman, by the politicians over the years, and the fact that the government itself has not paid serious attention to building up the capacity and rebuilding the confidence and empowering the institutions that are responsible for policy making in the country over the years. So the question is, when you have these domestic hindrances or contradictions, how exactly are you in a position in a dynamic changing world to become a key, effective, an assertive player like, Nigeria was in some years gone by? I think any discussion of our foreign policy today, I think, needs to take into account these issues, whether we can recreate, whether we can rebuild. Even if we can, how long will it take us? Because we are now 2 years into the current administration. And when you look at the horizon and what's going on within the global situation, we are practically not there as we should be. I think that would be my contribution. And I look forward that we have a robust conversation. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. You've actually, took us back.
We can't hear you. You are muted.
You're muted, sir. You're muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Ambassador, we are super grateful for your, intervention, and we hope to bring you back to probably respond to the questions that will be raised as we proceed. But in a word, if I'm to summarize your intervention, you've actually asked us the question, what is the fate of Pax Nigeriana? What is the fate of that manifest destiny that you said, when you started, you saw, but that appears to be, more or less blinking, if not dwindling? Before you stepped in, we were actually planning, and that was why I was talking about the context. The professor that we are celebrating today, is from somewhere. And among the Yorubas, there's that idea of Oriki. So we wanted to add a little interlude to, if you like, allow our Prof's head to be a little bit swollen. He would also give his intervention, but to allow him, go back to where he's from. So, Toby, do we have, are the guys ready to, recite the Oriki?
Yes, I'm ready. Certainly.
Oh, please, you have the floor. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Bárẹ̀ bá ti yá ẹjẹ́ á ṣe díẹ̀ níta wa ká tó mọ̀ ń lọ. Aráyà ké tí mo bọ́ lọ́rọ̀ kó fìsànfìsàn. Ìbá gbogbo èèyàn tí ń bẹ láwùjọ náwó. Gbogbo ẹni pátá mo kí lólódì kankan, okú nìkan níyan mọ́ tiẹ̀ lódì. Mo kẹ́ni rírí, mo ká ìrì, mo ká gbàgbà, mo kí múlẹ̀. Bẹ́ẹ̀ bá rọ́mọ Fáyẹmí ẹ pé mo kí mo lù lọ́gọ̀ ẹnu. O ní tẹ́, o ní ráre, o ní ṣàwúre lẹ́yìn gbèsè. Èkìtì nílé ọmọ agúnyán fodó bá mi epo yọkọ̀tọ̀ níkun àjìfà. Inú ilé àwọn bàbá tiẹ̀, àgbà tí ò bá yọkùn àwọn ló ní. Máa gbọ́rọ̀ ẹnu mi dáadáa. Mo bẹ́ gidi náà bẹ̀ wọn ọmọ láwòrè. Bàbá ló kọ́ mi lédè mo máa ń wí. Èyí ló kọ́ mi lédè mo sì mèrè. akọ́ mi lédè mọ́ wí mo mú lẹ́nu tó jábẹ́ lọ mo sòwò ètè rọjà kejì owó tí mo ṣe ni ìyá kọ́ mi sí bàbá ló gbé nítorí ẹ̀sìn bọ́ bá ṣe díẹ̀ wẹ́rẹ́ mo fẹ́ ròde Ẹ̀gbá o bí n bá lọ láàárọ̀ kí n dé lálẹ́ ọmọ onílé ọlá nítorí ọmọ Soremekun Káyọ̀dé Soremekun tó dà bẹ́ẹ̀ tí wù nìyàn má ṣe bínú pé mo bá olóyè mo pé ọlọ́kọ Ẹ̀gbá ọmọ orò lọ́tà ọmọ ológbọ́n jọ bí ọmọ àṣẹ tí mo mi kíkan kíkan Ẹ̀gbá ọmọ yúnmùyúnmù lóró ogógó ké Ẹ̀gbá tí Fọlájà wọn fògbòjà ọmọ Lísà bí ọmọ agbòǹgbò tàkàlà ọba márùn níbẹ̀ lóde Ẹ̀gbá Aláké Olúbàrà ọba ni gbogbo wọn pátápátá ni wọ́n ń dádé porogodo Olúbàrà ọba ní í ṣe Àgùrà ọba ni Ọ̀sìnlẹ̀ ọba ni Olówó Dùrú ọba ni Aláké Ẹ̀gbá ń gán ṣe ń bẹ lálàáfíà ara Ẹ̀gbá mo dẹ́yìn òrò kí n tó ṣẹ́gun mólú ó dẹ̀lẹ́ kínní Káyọ̀dé ọmọ Soremekun nù lé bàbá yín mo ní ẹ wá fòrò yín hàn mí nù lé yín jọ sí ẹni ń gúnyán lẹ́bẹ́ kí n ro kàkán mi nìjọ mo gúnyán lẹ́bẹ́ tán mo ro kàkán mi nìjọ kàkà kẹ́ ẹ fòrò yín hàn mí pẹ̀lẹ́bẹ́ gilẹ̀ gbélé mi lọ́wọ́ ìgbà tó dẹ̀lẹ́ kejì ẹ̀wẹ̀wẹ̀ mo ní ẹ wá fòrò yín hàn mí nù lé yín ẹni ń gúnyán lẹ́bẹ́ kí n ro kàkán mi nìjọ mo gúnyán lẹ́bẹ́ mo ro kàkán mi nìjọ kàkà kẹ́ ẹ tún fòrò yín hàn mí pẹ̀lẹ́bẹ́ gilẹ̀ tún gbélé mi lọ́wọ́ ìgbà tó dẹ̀lẹ́ kẹta ẹ̀wẹ̀wẹ̀ mo ní ẹ wá fòrò yín hàn mí nù lé yín kàkà kẹ́ ẹ fòrò yín hàn mí pẹ̀lẹ́bẹ́ gilẹ̀ tún gbélé mi lọ́wọ́ o àṣẹ womú lóró òkè o mo ní nàmú náà kúkú lóró kùn gandan ni ọmọ rò ń pagi orò ń pọ̀ pé nínú ilé bàbá ẹ̀yìn ni ọmọ rò ń pa gbàgùdà náà koríki bàbá ẹ̀yìn Ẹ̀gbá mo dẹ́yìn orò kí n tó ṣẹ́gun mólú Ẹ̀gbá ọmọ rò lọ́tà ọmọ ológbọ́n jọ bí ọmọ àṣẹ tí mo mi kíkan kíkan ọmọ òsínlẹ̀kùn palẹ̀kùn dé bẹ́ẹ̀ bá dòde Ẹ̀gbá ẹni mo ní ẹ bá ń kẹ́ nìkan mi Káyọ̀dé ọmọ Soremekun ọmọ wọn lóde Ẹ̀gbá ọmọ orò tí dún nàmùnàmù ọmọ Aláké jọ bí ọmọ Ẹ̀gbá ọmọ orò tí dún nàmùnàmù ẹ mọ̀ pé bí wọ́n ṣe ń ṣe lóde Ẹ̀gbá ni wọ́n ń ṣe ní Mẹ́kà náà ni wọ́n mú mi sẹ́mísẹ́mí Mẹ́kà ẹ̀yin mọ̀dò lóde Ẹ̀gbá Aláké wọ́n ń gàràfà Mẹ́kà ẹ̀yin golúmọ̀ lóde Ẹ̀gbá Aláké Ẹ̀gbá ọmọ Lísà bí ọmọ agbòǹgbò tàkàlà ẹ̀yin lọmọ olórìṣà dígbìn orókè tó bà gẹ́gẹ́gẹ́ lórí àparùnmọ̀ kì tíntín bá yé àparùnmọ̀ ó yànmùyàn mo mú yàn ọjọ́ òjọ́ mo fóró ń gbogbo ọ sọ pé òun ọ̀jẹ́ ọkà ọjọ́ mo fóró ń gbogbo ń jọ́sọ́ sọ pé òun ọ̀jẹ́ àfìgbà tó wá déjọ́ kẹrìndínlógún gbogbo oúnjẹ ló wà bùtàn òòrùn bàbá ayé ẹyin bá fò fẹ̀rẹ̀ ó gorí aparun olóṣò góńgò òòrùn péyàn tó bu lè òun ọmọ jẹ òòrùn pẹ́kọ̀ tó bu lè òun ọmọ jẹ ọmọ Aláké jọ bí ọmọ orò tí dún yànmùyànmù ẹwẹ́lẹ́ rẹ̀ kú ẹwẹ́lẹ́ rẹ̀ kú ẹwẹ́lẹ́ a ò ní fojú sunkún ara wa ẹrẹ̀wẹ́lẹ́ kú ẹwẹ́lẹ́ ará owó dé òwe èrò owó dé ará owó dé òwe èrò owó dé ẹ ò lọ àbẹ́ ò lọ èrò kájọlá a ó lọ a ó máa lọ èrò kájọlá agẹmọdẹyìn wá gbowó o agẹmọdẹyìn wá gbowó bẹ́ẹ̀ mú rẹ̀ Ẹ̀gbá ẹ̀ mú àlọ́ agẹmọdẹyìn wá gbowó o. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simon Olapo. We are super grateful for that. Oriki, thank you so much. So we'll quickly, because I
think we should give him a hand of applause. You know, we enjoy that.
And
thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Moderator, could Olapo just share his telephone contact?
Yeah, I'll do that in the comment. Thank you, sir.
I've never seen this in the last 20 years. Man.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Simon, please do that. We'll quickly go to Ambassador Bolaji Aderemi's presentation, because we are like 10 minutes behind schedule, more or less. So please, Ambassador Bolaji Aderemi, you have the floor, sir.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you clearly.
All right, thank you so much. Good evening, Excellencies. Today I'm really delighted and excited to be among what I can refer to as eggheads starting with the chair of the occasion, His Excellency Kayode, and of course, the last speaker that we just had now, His Excellency Joe Keshi, and of course, Professor Kayode Soremekun. I thank you all, the variety of scholars that are here, and colleagues and honored guests. I'm also excited to be with you today. Of course, I was in the same university with, in the same department with Professor Kayode Soremekun. And while he was graduate assistant, I was just an undergraduate. And I'm glad today that he's one of our highly respected, we call them ancestor in the International Relations Department of University of Ife. So I've known him, will I say, 42 years now, since 1983. Thank you for all you do, and I thank the organizers for celebrating Professor Soremekun. You've given me a topic within the theme, "The World is an Egg," and I must thank Ambassador Joe Keshi for bringing again to our memory the philosophical analysis of egg and spoon. My topic there is oiling her destiny, reimagining foreign trade and investment beyond oil extraction. I am still in service to the end of the year, when my own sex too will be extinct. Just as Ambassador Joe Keshi has said, he's one of our very referred elders in the profession, and also in the ministry. So I thank him for the good leadership in all areas of life. More strength to you. More strength to the person we are honoring. More strength to all the organizers, the two Tobis that we have here today. So it is both an honor and a privilege to participate in the 7th Roundtable of the Graduate Research Clinic, dedicated to the formidable intellectual legacy of Professor Kayode Soremekun, an academic colossal whose works continue to challenge and provoke deep reflection on the structures, ideologies, and trajectories shaping Nigeria's engagement with the world. The metaphor before us, the world is an egg, Nigeria is a spoon. This is as fragile and it is as it is fierce. So I was going to retitle this as Fragile and Fierce, but I think I will go with the title that we've been given. It captures the precarious balance Nigeria must maintain as it navigates global currents, delicate, strategic, and often underestimated. In this light, my paper titled Oiling Our Destiny, Reimagining Foreign Trade and Investment Beyond Oil Extraction, seek to confront one of Nigeria's most enduring paradoxes: our over-reliance on crude oil in a rapidly carbonizing global economy. For over 6 decades, oil has oiled the wheels of Nigeria's economic diplomacy and foreign policy. And that explains what Ambassador Joe Keshi was saying about our weak foreign policy now, and the fact that we've been unable to send out ambassador 2 years down this regime. It was very clear, the government said it, that there is no finance. And we often say it in foreign policy that you don't run foreign policy on a tight shoestring. So it has also trapped our imagination, the fact that we were relied on oil. We have often mistaken extractive wealth for sustainable power. Yet, oil as a commodity has proven to be a volatile benefactor, insulating us from innovation while exposing us to global shocks. This over-reliance on oil revenue as a mainstay of Nigeria's economy has untold hardship on the country's ability to meet its domestic and foreign obligations, especially in the event of global and exogenous shocks affecting international prices of oil and gas, or disruption in its production capacity as a result of activity of non-state actors in the Niger Delta region of the country. So I'm not pointing accusing finger at Ambassador Joe Keshi, who has 6 states of the region I've just spoken about, but in a very productive manner. Hence, Professor Soremekun's body of work reminds us that Nigeria's foreign policy cannot be detached from its domestic contradictions. And I must emphasize contradictions. In his analysis, he consistently critiques the elite capture of policy, the inertia of reform, and the blurred line between sovereignty and subservience in our international engagement. It is in this critical tradition that I locate my intervention. We must now pivot, not from oil as a resource, but from oil as a destiny. Reimagining foreign trade and investment means embracing a diversified economy driven by knowledge, creativity, agriculture, digital innovation, and green energy. It means transforming our embassies into trade intelligence hubs and our diplomats into deal makers. It means building trust with investors through predictable policy frameworks, fair arbitration mechanism, and infrastructure that connect local industries to global value chains. In a nutshell, for the country to fully actualize its full potential and to take its rightful place among community of nations, given its human and innumerable natural resources, then the country must be deliberate, strategic, and ruthless in diversifying its endemic economy by exploring other viable options from oil revenue. It also requires us to look inward beyond oil wells to human capital. Our youth bulge is a demographic opportunity, not a threat. We must export value, not just volume. Talent, not just tankers. As we do, Nigerian foreign trade can evolve from extraction to transformation. I hope Dr. Kayode will return to establish for us the not need now, but something that will deal with transformation. It is time to move from extraction to transformation. From a raw material republic to a nation that refines not only oil, but ideas. Oftentimes we hear, may Nigeria not happen to you? It's because many of our ideas have jumped bail. They left the country, probably possibly including the coordinators of this program, who are doing so from Illinois. In closing, I return to the metaphor. If the world is an egg and Nigeria is a spoon, then we must decide, do we steer with purpose or remain a fragile tool in someone else's kitchen? Question. Let us, in honor of Professor Kayode Soremekun, choose the former. Let us oil our destiny, not with fossil fuel, but with foresight, reforms, and resolve. Incidentally, I am in Lagos, where I am attending the Nigeria-China Economic Summit. And here are glowing tributes paid to China. But I was cautious to advise that we still have a huge trade imbalance with China, and we continue to have undermining Nigeria's regional hegemony by activities of China in our neighboring countries. But how many traders see this? How many even public officers see this? If China give the same support to our neighbors, Benin, Ghana, and they even are more coordinated in their approaches, certainly our hegemony is almost wiped off. It is in this light that I invite every one of us, in honor of Professor Soremekun, not to allow Nigeria to be a decorative ornament in the world. Even though I do not completely agree with Ambassador Joe Keshi that Nigeria cannot vie effectively again now for the seat, a permanent seat in the Security Council, because of my belief that the elder says the one that masquerade is running after should endure, as the one from heaven, which is masquerade, gets tired, so also the one from earth, with masquerade is chasing. There is a global meltdown. China feels it. America is feeling it. That is why there is tariff war. Even in Africa, the so-called countries that are our competitors are not in any way doing better. Maybe where they have always been ahead of us. But may I say that as we all continue to ruminate over this issue and we have this kind of discourse, one day Nigeria will emerge. Thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate. God bless.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Akinremi Bolaji, for your, quite interesting, and the fact that you're also ending with China. When people ask, can Nigeria be the China of Africa? But you've also raised fundamental points that we should look at. There should be a shift from oil to that knowledge economy, from tankers to talents. Quite interesting points. But we've had two, voices from practice, people that are in the thick and thin, the center of Nigeria's foreign policy. Now we want to shift to the academia. And I would invite Professor Kayode Ishola to give his talk again for 15 minutes. If you can make it lesser, then we would have catch up the time that we've missed. Prof, you have the floor, sir. Professor Kayode Ishola.
Thank you very much. Because I have to keep the time short, let me use the Nigerian regular phrase, standing on the existing protocol. My teachers, my senior colleagues, and everybody on ground, I greet you. Good evening.
Maybe it's his network, sir. Doctor.
Well,
Prof. Professor Ishola, can you hear me?
Dr. Shudi, I think we might move on to the next speaker. I will reach out to him privately to
Okay, that would be great. Well, we have time for goodwill messages, but because we are short on time, probably we can just have Dr. Tola Odubanjo to give his talk. Dr. Odubanjo.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. You have the floor. You can present.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I must mention that I am very happy and I feel very privileged to be here this evening, particularly when the matter has to do with my former teacher, my mentor, my academic father, who eventually became my colleague at the University of Lagos, colleague in quote here, we're using our language in academia. Your Excellency, Dr. Kayode, His Excellency Joe Keshi and Ambassador Akinremi, and every other person here present this evening. Thank you for this invitation. My major task here is to, present some of my views about an aspect of Professor Kayode Soremekun in terms of his intellectual service to Nigeria in particular and humanity in general. The title of my short talk is The Insurgent Media and Democratic Accountability. In essence, this has to do with Professor Soremekun's role, particularly during, Nigeria's very difficult period of transitioning from military rule to democratic governance. I understand here that some of us view what is in existence, the political process in existence currently, as civil rule, more of civil rule than democracy. I understand where Dr. Fayemi is coming from. However, within the context of our discussion tonight, we'll see democracy as the way it ought to be, not necessarily, what we practice in Nigeria. At that time, at the period of Nigeria's transition to democracy, I know that it is not alien to all of us. That's the historic role that the media played, particularly in enlightening the populace and, using every means at their disposal to send the military government, out of governance in Nigeria. And it is on record that Professor Soremekun counted himself worthy. He played his role. He was and is still an enigma. He was and is still an iconoclast. The fact that he wasn't arrested and jailed like so many other of his colleagues in journalism remains a wonder today. At that period when Nigeria was transitioning, he made use of his intellect and his pen in trying to expose the evils of military rule and, preferring options and alternatives and solutions to Nigeria's democratic path. At the stage that Nigeria got its democracy, and which in literature we could actually call transformation, the movement from the transition process to the process of transformation. He actually shifted his gaze and his intellectual prowess towards questioning some of the major challenges that confronted, our formative stages during the democratic era. And I can guess this will have informed, eventually the establishment of the Center for Cephalology at the Federal University of Ekiti. That beyond the transition process or program, even when democracy has arrived, how do you transform the society, a society that have been under military rule for decades, and coming with the barrage, the garbage of democratic rule in terms of particularly the arrangement, the federal arrangement, the centralization of the governance system. So he focused his attention on questioning, some of these issues. And again, a particular issue that caught his attention was actually about election, the election process, and how, because of course election marks a very is the hallmark of democracy, the process of having free and fair elections and periodic elections. Okay, now within and just like the scholar he is, within the whole broad spectrum of election, his attention was drawn, in a lot of his writings, was drawn to election monitoring, the whole idea of election monitoring. From his series of interrogations, he came up with this fact or this notion that the whole idea of election monitoring, particularly, for the foreign monitors in Nigeria and in Africa in general, that is actually a farce. That, I mean, they do not present the issues the way they're supposed to be. That the whole idea, the whole context of election monitoring does not provide the responses and the results that are expected, within our own context, that there are still some challenges. So in one of his works, he justifiably, derisively regarded them, particularly the election monitors, as the process of election monitoring as disguised tourism. In his work in 1999, a paper he wrote in 1999, he says the paper is titled "Disguised Tourism and the Electoral Process in Africa," trying to point out the irrelevance to the democratic development of African states of the election monitoring. So pointedly, he made it clear that they are of no relevance given their structure and the purpose. They are never on ground. They don't understand the terrain, and they are so short in numbers that they are unable to cover all of the ground, such that at the end of the process, by the time they are releasing their reports of what transpired, you can be sure that they are so far, the report is so far away from reality. He provided some options for them, that if we must insist on election monitoring, that these monitors have to engage social scientists on ground to be able to have first-hand knowledge and information about the terrain they are, attempting to cover. He also, like I mentioned earlier, spoke about their numbers, the fact that they are not able to cover all of the ground. And he also is always hammering on the need for the citizens to uphold the tenets of democracy. That means it has to be homegrown. The tenets of democracy would have to be adopted by the citizenry. So it speaks so much about the citizen agency in any democratic process. So even when Nigeria is advancing in the transformative stage and attempting to move towards the consolidation of democracy, and as Nigeria wobbles towards that process of consolidation, Professor Soremekun has not stopped short of haranguing the political class about the various issues in Nigeria's governance process. He writes so eloquently about issues of corruption, about service delivery, electoral malpractice, and all of those other issues that bedevil Nigeria. One point he has made clear in his interventions on governance in Nigeria is that need for citizen agency. He has argued in several platforms that through all the various possibilities, all the various platforms, that the civil society, labor unions, like ASU and co, we write so much about ASU, that the whole essence is that the government must be held accountable, starting from the lowest level of governance, the local government. The citizens must be involved in the governance process. In closing, permit me to conclude this way, that Professor Soremekun has paid his dues as a public intellectual. Through his depth of knowledge, he has written so eloquently, thereby, showing his nationalistic fervor, and particularly towards the betterment of his fatherland, Nigeria. Once again, I'd like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to offer some few words about my teacher, my mentor, and my academic father. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Odubajo. We are grateful. You've actually, especially when you touched on Professor Shoemeku's work on election monitoring. I was just trying to place that alongside Ambassador Joe Keshi's, opening remark when he talked about, the almost like the chaos in contemporary global system, where I imagine that those that are actually sending, the monitors from the global north, if you like, are confronted with challenges that questions their own democracy, and to what extent can they actually, but I will quickly, Professor Ishola is back on the call. So Prof, please, you have the floor so that we can take your talk before we proceed to the Q&A, sir. Prof, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Prof.
Not again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Now we can hear you. Prof, maybe what you can deactivate your video so that we only listen to your voice. You can deactivate the video so that we just listen to your voice. Hopefully that will make it easier. Hello, Prof. Maybe while we wait for Prof to join us, we've had super excellent presentations so far. So I would invite the audience to ask questions, goodwill messages, so that while Professor Ishola tries to sort out his internet issues, then we can quickly use that time for the Q&A. So please, if you have a question, you can just indicate.
Maybe I read some comments on the platform while we wait for Professor Ishola's audio to remain. I think one from Moses Abolade. It says, "Great presentation. I love your optimistic views, Ambassador. Although I doubt the possibilities. However, I'm with you as a curious optimist too. Good to learn and listen, everyone." Okay, there's another comment by same Moses Abolade. "Well done, Doctor. Great insight. We'll check some of those works further. Thank you for sharing that review." All right, so we can drop our questions, contributions, and goodwill messages while we take our speakers. Thank you.
Toby, I think Professor Sholo Motola is on the call.
Yes, certainly, Prof.
Yeah, so we can actually bring him forward so that we save some time, hoping that Professor Ishola can join us. So, Prof, Professor Sholo Motola.
Okay, thank you so much, the moderator, for having me. Let me begin on a note of appreciation by registering my profound appreciation and to be a part of this very, very important panel. Very, very important, not just because of the person of Professor Kayode Soremekun that we are honoring today, but also, more importantly, because of his huge contribution, not just to scholarship, but also to the governance of our university system in Nigeria, particularly at the Federal University of Ekiti. So, and that is why I'm particularly happy about the topic you have assigned to me, because whatever I'm going to say is going to be born out of my personal experiences and encounter with Professor Kayode Soremekun as the Vice Chancellor of the university. So, because of time, let me go straight to the topic you have assigned to me about his contributions to the development of the Federal University of Ekiti in terms of the expansion of faculties, introduction of new programs, in terms of mentorship of young colleagues, and in terms of generating resources from private sources to administer the university. Let me begin from his program expansions at the Federal University of Ekiti. You know, Professor Soremekun became the Vice Chancellor on February 11, 2016, if I can remember very well. And by the time he came, he inherited only 4 faculties in the university. We had at that point, I was not there that time, but at least I came and made the history. As at that time, we had the Faculty of Agriculture, Faculty of Arts and Humanities, Faculty of Engineering, and Faculty of Science. So these were the 4 faculties in existence when he came as the Vice Chancellor of the university. So the first thing he did was to first split the then Faculty of Arts and Humanities, because as considered at the time, there were a number of programs that were supposed to be under social sciences, programs like economics, sociology, psychology, and demography. So they were put under the Faculty of Arts and Humanities when he came. So the first thing he did within that first year was to carve out the Faculty of Social Sciences into a distinct faculty from the old Faculty of Arts and Humanities. So he moved those 4 programs to the new Faculty of Social Sciences, and he created 4 additional departments. Okay, is it 4 or 5 now? Additional department. I know he created political science, peace and conflict studies, criminology and security studies, and mass communication. I think these were the 4 new departments he created to add to the existing 4 to start the faculty of social sciences. And it was at that point, and I'm going to emphasize more on this when I shift to the idea of mentoring and mentorship, because it was at that point he searched me out on his own. I never met Professor Soremekun before that time until he called me. I will come to that later. So, but the point I was just trying to say here was that he was the one who started the Faculty of Social Sciences. And after that, within the 5 years of his administration, I think he established about 10 different faculties, okay? Social Sciences, Management Sciences, Faculty of Pharmacy, Faculty of Basic Medical Sciences, the College of Medicine. That didn't take off, but he started the process. The Faculty of Law he established and he took off before he left, did the admission for the 4 sets, Faculty of Environmental Sciences, Faculty of Education, and also the College of Postgraduate Studies. So when you look at the categories of faculties that he is established, you realize that he was being guided by the cardinal principle, okay, by the core mandate given to those new universities established by then President Goodluck Jonathan. You know, and what were these core principles? One, to improve human capital development in the country, and in a way that they will be relevant to national development, and also be able to relevant to the development of their host communities. So he carefully considered those mandates, and that was why his emphasis was to establish new faculties, establish new programs, so that they could bring in more students, so to boost enrollment, to give access to university education to many more prospective applicants out there in the country. Because when we go by the statistics of the number of Nigerians writing JAM annually and the small percentage that JAM was able to take accordingly, you realize that there was need for that expansion. And without program expansion, without creating new faculties, new program, it would have been difficult for him to actualize that mandate of using the establishment of those universities to create more access to university education for the student. So, but he didn't just stop at creating these new faculties. Even in the existing faculties that he inherited, you had some of them with just 2 departments, some with 3 departments. So part of what he did was also to create new programs, okay, that were actually relevant and competitive. For example, in the Faculty of Science, I know for sure he was the one who came and created the Department of Environmental Management and Toxicology. Okay, so, and I know in the Faculty of Art, there were new programs that he also introduced there. So I think the key point I'm just trying to make here is that he was able to contribute significantly in terms of expansion, in terms of creating access, okay, to Nigerians for university education. And I must also say that when you look at the Faculty of Pharmacy, for example, Basic Medical Sciences, College of Medical Sciences, College of Medicine, these are programs that are capital intensive. You need huge resources, okay? So, but within the available meager resources, he was able to manage and to leverage on his personal connection and network to be able to get those programs started under his vice chancellorship. And I think he deserved a lot of commendation for being able to do that. Now, let me quickly say a few words about mentoring and mentorship as I witnessed it personally under Professor Kayode Soremekun. And I'm going to use myself as a case study. Then Dr. Samuel Oyewole, I think he's also online. Then Professor Aziz Olaniyan. You know, when he wanted to establish the Faculty of Sciences and Political Science was to be established, one day I was on the road traveling. I just saw a call. I didn't have his number. And I received a call. A call came in. I picked. I said, hello, who is on the line? He said, this is Kayode Soremekun. I shouted. I never met him. but I have interacted with him a lot about his publications, his work, and that was why it was easy for me to relate with, to some of those points that previous scholars, the ambassadors and even the scholar, some of the important points they have made, I can relate to some of them, and I will make that will be my final point before I leave the stage. So he called me and said, I said, sir. So the only question he said, young prof, will you be willing to work with me? I said, with all pleasure, sir, that this is an opportunity I've been looking for, because at that time I already left my previous university and I went to the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies at the National Assembly in Abuja. So as somebody was offering me this opportunity on a platter of gold, somebody I had never met before in my life. So I said, okay, please, I'm on the road traveling, that if I have your permission, I will call you when I get to. He said, please go ahead. So to cut the long story short, I got to Abuja, I called him. So he now told me to sign. He now asked me to come. That it was actually Professor Siri Obi, Social and Council, that sent him my CV. And when he read the CV, he was impressed. So we never met. So he invited me and I came over. And the meeting didn't last for more than 5 minutes. We look at the CV together, page by page. He said, young prof, he said, it's not about how long, but how well that you will get it. And what was it then I was going to get? That I was going to get a full professor. I thought it was a joke because I left my previous job as a senior lecturer. So, but he said I was going to get that full professorship. I thought it was a joke. So he now handed me over to his secretary to drop my CV, and I left. Behold, 2 weeks after, I was called that my letter of temporary appointment as a full professor of political science was ready. I came back and I received the letter. And that's Professor Kayode Soremekun for you. I never met him anywhere before that time. But just seeing my CV, going through the CV, he was happy with what he saw. And that was how I became a professor of political science. He didn't stop there. I saw he was intentional. He was intentional about trying to promote me, to mentor me, okay, to become not just a better scholar, but also a good administrator. And that was why he also appointed me as the pioneer head of the Department of Political Science in that university, and at the same time, the pioneer head of the Department of History and International Studies. So I funded those two departments. With his support and encouragement, I was able to nurture those departments to a point where we could hand them over to younger colleagues. But even before I finished as head of those two departments, he already appointed me as Director of Research and Development of the university. And from there, I went to contest election and became the dean. And from there, I contested election into the council of the university on the platform of Senate, all just because of his encouragement and his support. Because of time, let me move to the second person, Samuel Oyewole, then Mr. Samuel Oyewole. So we needed an assistant lecturer. There were already 4. I never told Prof this. Probably he's hearing this from me for the first time. Some of his aides already have 4 CVs with them that they wanted him to take to fill that position. And I took Samuel's CV and I said, Oga, please take this boy. Instead, I didn't tell him what those his aides were doing. He said, young prof, because that's the way he addressed it. We say young prof up to today. He said, are you so sure about this? Well, I said, yes, sir. I am recommending to you someone who will be better than Omotola in the next 5 years. When he had that, he adjusted his seat. He said, are you sure about what I said? Yes, sir. He said, okay, take this CV. Go and make your recommendation. And I took the CV and I wrote it. I said, sir, I am recommending to you for appointment as an assistant lecturer, somebody who will be better than Shola Omotola in the next 5 years. And I took it to him. Immediately, he got that recommendation. He said, I will hold you by your words. But he gave approval that the boy should be given the appointment immediately. I don't think it's up to 5 years now, but I'm happy and I'm proud to say that Samuel Oyewole is already better than Shola Omotola. And I think many of us will be able to testify to that. I'm proud and happy about what Sam is doing. And I'm sure Professor Soremekun is also happy and proud about what Samuel Oyewole is doing. Now, the last point I want to make about mentoring and mentorship It's about the appointment of Professor Aziz Olaniyan, and I'm sure many of us on this platform will know him as a full professor of political science in Foye. Professor Olaniyan, a very, very fine and fantastic scholar and person. For whatever reason, politics, I know, his career stagnated at Ekiti State University. For one reason or the other, they won't process his application. Document can be there, internal processes completed, but 3-4 years after, he was not promoted to the rank of associate professor. The papers were hanging. And I said, bring your CV. I got the CV I took to the VC, Professor Soremekun. I said, sir, I want you to tell Professor Aziz Olaniyan that this is a fantastic scholar. He took the CV, went through and said, yes. I said, young prof, we must make this happen, that we must bring him in. So he gave approval that he should be appointed on temporary appointment as a full prof. But that time we have a director of administration who was very strong. I know Professor Kayode will be smiling now. Professor will be smiling. We have a super director of admin that time who wanted to stop that thing. And we were doing back and forth. This letter never came. I will go back to the VC. He said he approved. I will go back to. So until one day, I went to Prof. I said, sir, if really you wanted this guy, let's resolve this matter today. He said, okay, I should go and call the DA. So the DA came. What happened when I gave approval? The DA pulled me and said, so you think you are that powerful? You want to bring in a full professor into this university without my knowledge that I didn't discuss with him? Oh, I said, was that the problem? I said, yes, okay, I'm sorry. Now you know. You know? But the VC, Professor Soremekun, gave approval that that letter must come out. But for me, that was just one stage. What really impressed me most was that after getting the letter, Professor Olaniyan came and said he needed to give them 3 months in lieu of notice at Ekiti State University before he come. Professor Soremekun said no, that you have to come now. But he said he doesn't have money. He didn't have money to pay for 3 months salary to. Right there, Professor Kayode transferred the money to him from his personal purse to go and pay them off at EXU so that he could resume with immediate effect. That is Professor Kayode for you. He can go any extra length once he's convinced about the quality of your scholarship. So the moment he saw the CV, he was attracted. For him, it was almost an addiction. Seeing very, very strong and solid CV, he will do his best to get that person recruited. And let me also add this. When he brought me in, ASU started agitating. That said, no, you cannot bring somebody from senior lecturer to professorship, that they will not accept it. They started doing all kinds of press conferences, attacking the personality of the vice chancellor. They spreading all kinds of. So I went to VC one day. I said, "Okay, I'm worried. The way these people were going about." I said, "Young prof, don't worry. That before I approved your appointment, that I gave your paper to Professor Femi Otubanjo. He gave approval. He gave to another professor. He recommended that, look, if they were even going to remove me as VC because of appointment, that he was ready to lose that appointment as a vice chancellor because he could defend my appointment anywhere, any day." And one day we got to the floor of Senate. I was surprised. He started a story, analysis, saying there was one of the, maybe, I can't remember fully now, but he was saying where that person applied for employment. After going through the CV, they said he was too good to be employed. And because of that, they refused to employ that person. That was the analogy he used to describe my recruitment on the floor of Senate. That people were agitating, people were worried because they felt threatened because of the quality of my CV. So the point I'm making is that Professor Kayode can go any length to defend any of his mentees because he will make sure he has done the due diligence very carefully, scrutinized the CV before going ahead to give the employment. So if you look at those 3 cases I have presented, you can see that without any iota of doubt, the Professor Kayode is a worthy mentor, a very, very strong one who believes in merit, who will also do things by merit. And as an extension of those attributes, I will tell you without any fear of contradiction that Professor Soremekun is somebody who is deeply rooted in this culture of debate. On many occasions, we will be in his office, he will initiate a conversation about any issue in Nigeria, and we will discuss extensively. And he will always submit, he will always recognize and accept a superior argument, irrespective of where it is coming from. And that is why when you have that kind of a mentor, where you can freely share your thought, express your view, I think that way mentees can actually grow and develop through that particular system. I know I've exceeded the time allocated to me. But let me just say again that under him, we were able to forge sustainable collaborations with a lot of international organizations, to attract funding to the university. And one critical example is the Social Science Research Council in New York, where he was able to attract funding for the training on young scholars in scholarly writing and grant writing and many other things that we did like that. And when you offend Professor Soremekun as a mentee, he will correct you in a polite way, but he will never, because of that, discard you or send you off. I know I have not been nice in quotes to him, but despite that, he has been accommodating, he has been tolerating my excesses, and I think if we have many scholars like him across our various departments in the university system in Nigeria, I think our universities will be better for it. So let me pause here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Professor Omotola. You've actually...
Okay, so I'm available now, and I'm very sure I'm clear.
Okay, Prof, you have the floor. You're clear. You're very clear. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I was carried away by Professor Motola's testimony, and I was wondering whether it was time to give testimony so that I will start giving my own too. But I won't waste our time to start giving any testimony. I'll just go straight to my lecture. I like one thing that Prof emphasized, and that is the fact that Professor Soremekun, as VC, is a man of merit. He is. He is a man of merit. Okay. Now, Prof is a man of merit in taking appointments, appointing people to head this or promoting them to anything. He is a man of merit. Prof mentioned that, and I think I need to emphasize it. Well, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we're here talking about someone who, from student unionist to journalist to university administrator and a global academic convener, offers a blueprint for engaged public service, principled leadership, intellectual rigor, and institutional transformation, all in spite of the contradictions that you may find in the Nigerian state. Now, I've been asked to speak about Professor Soremekun from the scholar activist point of view. And I'm going to summarize my speech on what I titled Soremekun, Re-emphasizing Public-Spirited Intellectualism in Global South Scholarship. Now, all over the world, you see countries mention and exhibit their own public intellectuals, those who do not just rely on departmental dimension to scholarship, but who will touch the public and engage the polity to ensure that things go well at any point in time. So all over the world, you have several names, such as Du Bois, Frank Fanon, Angela Davis, and it was particularly Professor Soremekun who mentioned to me the case of Essential Chomsky. When I was going to the US in 2008, and he saw it necessary to organize a goodbye dinner for me, as it were. So all over the world, you have scholar activists, and I'm sure in Nigeria too, we have them. When you mention names like Claude Eke, you mention Amina Mama, you mention Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and of course, Fela Anikulapo Kuti, who in his own intellectual right tried to engage the Nigerian society to ensure egalitarianism. Now, it is amongst personalities like this that you will locate the scholarship of Professor Soremekun, okay? And these examples show that scholarship and public responsibility can be mutually reinforcing, as it were. So, directly or otherwise, public-spirited individuals do the following for the society. One, they are policy advisors whose works touch on how institutions perform their functions. They are also educators within the system. They promote civic awareness and democratic literacy. They are also institutional critics, because if you look at it from the system analysis, if there are no individuals and scholars who engage the system critically, then the cycle will not complete. And finally, they are mediators and bridge builders. And of course, from the testimony we have heard of Professor Soremekun, we can see how he mediated and how he built bridges with integrity and pragmatism. Now, this is what Prof represents right from his student days as a student union activist down to his global engagement with, series of awards and scholarship. And then finally, he carried his public-spirited intellectualism and activism to the office of the Vice Chancellor of FOIE between 2016 and 21, where he radically oversaw major expansion, of the university. I mean, that has been stated. And not just that, one of the remarkable things is that he engaged in very objective recruitment, very ethnic balanced recruitment, and of course, he stopped the hitherto culture of using cash and favoritism to obtain honorary doctoral degrees from the university. So, I mean, I'm not just taking the lecture in holistic, I'm just summarizing. Now, who is such a person who, as a scholar, will make it their business to engage the public institutions to ensure that the society is egalitarian? And you permit me, in trying to define this, to refer to the Yoruba knowledge system as encapsulated in Ifa. Anudi Ifa, which is titled Osa Yetoro, Osa Tayoro, says, and I quote, "Apá ló níṣẹ́ ìgòdó, ẹsẹ̀ ló làṣẹ ìrìnnà, gẹ̀ǹgẹ̀ àyà ní ṣàtọ́kùn bàtà jíjó, kóró ẹ̀yìn ló ní ìrókò jẹun, ẹnu ló níṣẹ́ orin. Adífá fún ayé abùfẹ́ èèyàn, ẹkún kí wọn ó lè gúnrégé ni wọ́n ń sun, ẹbọ ni wọ́n ní wọn ó ṣe. Then èṣù wá bù gìrì, ó wá fariwo bọnu, ó lò mẹ́ta làá fi máyégún." Èṣù is trying to say here within the Ifa knowledge system that there are three things that you expect in an individual who makes the world a better place. First, ó ní akọni nífá mọ́fá àwò ilé alára. In simple English, you may want to interpret that as a great committed teacher. That's what Ifa is calling akọni nífá mọ́fá àwò ilé alára. Then the second one is Ariwa Odale Fong Awo Diajiro. He who sees indiscipline in the society, yet refuses to keep quiet. That is the second criteria as stipulated in Odifa. And then the third one, which is the final one, Oyekami Oletente Awo Waranguaga. He who, in spite of being a great teacher, a public critic, will still not stay aloof from public service. And if you allow me to put it together, you see that these are the three things that you find in the personality of Professor Soremekun. Now, so it shows that the wisdom of scholar activism is captured within the Ifa indigenous knowledge system of the Yoruba people. Now, over the years, I have demonstrated how the world around us, as well as our country, Nigeria, have been able to put together such scholar activists who have been engaged in the system to make the world a better place. Now, what then do we need to do in Nigeria, following the example of Soremekun? And then the answer is that we need to engage more. We need to engage more as scholars. We do not need, at this point of our history, with our situation in Nigeria, we do not need scholars who do just scholarship for scholarship's sake. We need scholars who will engage critically the system through whichever means. Soremekun did his own with journalism, with student activism, and like my colleague mentioned, he probably did not have to get arrested, but he made his mark on a very solid form. So in our individual ways, we must continue as scholars to engage the system in such a way that will make Nigeria a better place. And I say this because when we do so, we are creating more policy advisors, educators, institutional critics, and those who will make the world much better. Okay, so now, how does the Soremekun case set new agenda for scholarship in the global north? That's my penultimate slide. And I'm saying in the case of Nigeria and other parts of the global south, the scholar activist is not a luxury. They are a necessity. Given the histories of colonialism, neocolonialism, neo-imperialism, and fragile democratic structures inflicted on the global south by what Soremekun himself calls post-colonial masters with their glutinous, servant-tended privileges. More scholar activists and public-spirited intellectuals are needed now more than ever before. Okay? When we engage them, they engage vernacular knowledge and indigenous epistemologies. It is only when we have scholar activists that we can develop indigenous epistemologies. I mean, that's the sense in what I just did by using Odu Ifa, Ifa, which some people almost always think is a religion that is antagonizing Islam and Christianity. It's a source of knowledge with which we can solve our problems and explain our own peculiarities as a people. When we engage more scholars, following the Soremekun example, we can tackle problems such as food insecurity, youth unemployment, gender inequality, and state violence. I mean, I don't have the time to elaborate on all this. And finally, when we engage scholars of Soremekun's disposition, that of a public intellectual, we serve as custodians of memory. Our nation will have institutional memory, and it will not remain what it is now, which, again, Soremekun, I'm quoting, is a mere anti-intellectual society. Now, in conclusion, to be a scholar activist in a public service is to stand at the intersection of thought and action, of critique and construction, of vision and responsibility. It is not an easy path. So you can imagine what Soremekun has gone through. I wish I had all the time. I would have told you some of the encounters he had with the non-progressive forces of the Nigerian state, but I don't have the time. So this is what Soremekun has done as contribution. To make a salad of the references, permit me to close with the words of Paulo Freire. And I quote him: "Washing one's hands of the conflict between the powerful and the powerless in the society means to side with the powerful and not to be neutral." Professor Soremekun was not neutral in his scholarship. He took side of the people. History has justified him. Testimonies have been given to put him in perspective. And of course, Soremekun has demonstrated how not to be neutral in the journey of the third world intellectualism. He has also reminded us the need to generate more and more neutral scholars in a bid to make the life in this global south of ours more egalitarian. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Thank you so much, Professor Ishola. At last, we finally managed to get you on board. And of course, you've raised fundamental points that, some of them I would even want to, push it to Professor Soremekun, especially for yourself and Professor Motola. You've talked about, in your case, scholar activist. Professor Motola talked about mentorship. But we must also not forget that Professor Soremekun operated within a university that, as we know, is an arena for struggle. Globally, the university is an arena for struggle. The university is not that easygoing space where you easily mentor people. The university, in some case, is a representation, a smaller representation of the chaos in the Nigerian state. So before we invite Professor Soremekun to give his talk, I would just like to read a few questions, probably for the panelists to maybe respond to, the questions in like 1 minute each. The first question is by John Daniel, and is asking if oil is Nigeria's spoon handle, in quote. Are we forever cursed to scrap the bottom of the global egg? How can we draw far-reaching lessons from Professor Soremekun's notion of the facade of oil diplomacy for forging a diversified economy for Nigeria? And he asks the second question. Professor Soremekun has authored over 111 op-eds that addresses critical issues within Nigeria and globally in various media forums. In a generation where academics are keen to publish their works almost exclusively with conventional academic journals or publishers due to publish or perish syndrome in our universities, how do we emulate Professor Soremekun's strategy of public intellectualism without diluting real scholarship? I would just invite the panelists to just give their responses to just in less than a minute. And I want to start with Professor Shola Motola. How do you relate to Professor Soremekun publishing over 100 op-eds, within a context where the same university will be asking you to publish in journals, books? Prof, please, can you quickly respond to that? Professor Shola Motola.
Okay, thank you so much, my brother, my friend, for this opportunity. I think first and foremost, it depends on the context and the interest of the scholar in question. I think for Professor Kayode Soremekun, for him, it was a responsibility. There are three broad strands of intellectual responsibility of a scholar. First one is you research and you publish. You teach, then you research and you publish. And the third one is community service. So publishing op-eds in magazines, in newspapers, I think it falls largely under the third category of community responsibility. And that doesn't mean that is the only way you can do community responsibility, as a scholar. But I think for him, it was one of his core areas of interest. He served on the editorial board of major newspapers in Nigeria. I knew at the time he was with the Guardian on their editorial board, maybe still working with Business Day today, maybe as even the chair of the editorial board of Business Day. And I know there were some other leading newspapers where he served on their editorial board. So I think with time, he developed that interest, and he was using those platforms as a public intellectual, to advance, to canvass his position about how best he thought we could reposition Nigeria, towards the path of sustainable transformation and development. So we have to put it, okay.
Yes, thank you, Prof. So, Professor Ishola, can you just, in less than 1 minute, also, engage that issue of looking beyond journals and books into, the media space?
Well, thank you very much. I think in a nutshell, Professor Soremekun epitomizes that, and he has demonstrated that when you are a scholar, you are not just a scholar in the department, you are also not just a scholar in the discipline, you are a scholar within the globe. I mean, that's part of the poetic sentences that he usually mentored and still mentors me with, as the case is. For me, Prof is exceptional when it comes to mentoring. Even when you are talking about putting words together, there's no way you can sit down with him for 15 minutes without learning so many unusual English constructions, like very episodic behavior. I put a lot on my paper, but because of time, I will never want to do it. And it's somebody who keeps pushing you to the next stage. When I got my PhD in those early years, Prof will say, well, Kayode, this is now the time for you to face the tyranny of the empty screen. I mean, you will just manufacture that expression and you begin to sleep and remember them. When you became an associate professor, we'll call you and say, well, it's a stage in growth. Oh, you must not rest. You must not relax. When you can become professor again, Prof will come with another English. Well, it's just another stage in growth. So this is the time to begin something. And I mean, always, ever, it will put you on your toe. And I think, I wish, anyway, don't let me express too much wishes, but I think Prof
Thank you.
is an epitome of what it means not to be a scholar in the department, not to be a scholar in the discipline, but a scholar of global, touch and relevance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, could I just wade into this conversation, this part you are having? Because, I'm very fond.
Oh.
This is Ambassador Keshi.
Yes, please. You have the floor, sir. You have the floor, please.
Yes. I just want to contribute to the conversation the professors are having. And I was saying that when we were growing up in Ibadan, and before we went to the university, most of us students of secondary schools, we knew a lot of professors, not face to face, but by name, whether in Ibadan whether in Ife, whether in Lagos, whether in Isuka or ABU. For one simple reason, the professors of those days and lecturers, in fact, some of them were lecturers when we got to know them, they were the one leading public discourse. They were the key advisors using the newspapers to advise government. They were the one equally challenging government on a number of issues. And over time, that generation simply disappeared, except perhaps people like Professor Soremekun, who remained and then took interest in expressing his views through the newspapers and the journalistic world. And one of the professors actually did say, and I note saying that they need to engage more and more critically. I think today that is what is missing from the universities, that the universities of today have completely gone silent in the face of what the country is going through today, because they are not engaging enough. And I can say this very clearly, that when you go to the networks in Nigeria every day, you can hardly see one or two professors coming in to express their views or to be critical of the situation or to even direct or contribute to how we can solve some of our problems. And the professors I'm talking about, they are not just professors from one department or from one discipline. They cut across board, from economics, from political science, from sociology. They made their voices known and they were leading public discourse in Nigeria for a very long time, until the military, of course, intervened and started killing their enthusiasm or interest. I thought I'd make that point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Jokeshi. That's actually a brilliant point. But again, I revert to my earlier point about the university as a space, an arena for struggle. What happened to the to the universities and to the professors that Ambassador Jokeshi talked about? Why is it not happening now as we speak? What is the extent of academic freedom, within the universities themselves? And if we step back to think about the organizers of this conversation, these are graduate students within Nigerian universities and outside, wanting to still sustain that conversation that professor, of course, you're a professor, with the extent of knowledge you have, Professor Jokeshi has raised. It's still happening, but I think it's a kind of struggle between sustaining what you talk about, that aspiration of the university that you talked about, and what is happening to the university itself. So, but because we are short on time, I also wanted to pose a question to, Ambassador Jokeshi and Ambassador Aderemi about, Nigeria deciding finally, if you like, under the current president, to become a partner, state in BRICS. What are the implications of that for that, manifest destiny that we reflected upon? But at this point, we would invite the celebrant to, share his reflections with us. Professor Kayode Soremekun, please, you have the floor. You have 10 minutes, but of course, we can't tell the birthday boy to stop dancing. You have the floor to, reflect on some of the points you've listened to. And of course, as you posted on our platform, the Lagos State University platform today, and Professor Ishola mentioned it, that when you become a professor, you were sending a message to the new professors. And I suspect some of them are on this call. I'm sorry to put them on the spot. Some of them are on this, call. That, yes, you have just been promoted into that rank, but work continues. So, Prof, you have the floor, sir.
Successful in terms of the execution of drop 14 GBU 57s, submarines launched key items from offshore. We were in out with impunity, nobody was hurt, and I think it's
yes. Good afternoon, everybody, or better still, good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? Or?
We can hear you loud and clear, Prof.
Yes,
Good
very
evening,
clear.
please. Let me begin by saying that I'm really very, very grateful for a lot of things that I've had today. I'm a very, let me put it this way, I'm a very insular person. And at a point in time, shortly before this program, I nearly ensured that it was called off because I did not really want to be the center of attention. More so because of my own reflections on the linkage between honor and the dynamics of a post-colonial society like ours. But then it is happening. And I must say, I'm really very, very grateful to the organizers. I'm also very grateful to the cast of eminent personalities like His Excellency, former governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Kayode, who in his own way is an alumnus of King's College in the double sense. I'm sure he knows what I'm saying. I'm also very grateful to one of the very sharp voices on Nigeria's foreign policy, i.e. Ambassador Joe Keshi. I knew Keshi way back in Holland when I went for a postdoctoral program on international law to complement my PhD in international relations. And since then, we've kept touch on and off. And as you can see today, he has a lot of very strong views on Nigeria's foreign policy as regards the way it should be. And I'm very touched by the fact that you spoke about the anomy at the domestic level, and as such, that this cannot translate into a vigorous foreign policy for Nigeria. One cannot overstate this, if only because any observer of the Nigerian scene will discover that at the moment, Nigeria, as he rightly said, is no longer being consulted on African issues. Rather, South Africa has taken that position. But the point remains, which entity created South Africa? Nigeria was part of that. And that is why at the recent G7 meeting, it was South Africa that was there. When medical doctors had to be transported from their home base to Africa, it was South Africa. So to that extent, it's spot on that Nigeria is yet to come into our own. He says, for instance, that the ministry is in a bad shape. I cannot agree more. But through which agency? He said the politicians. Well, which means over time, the political class, not just now, more or less decimated our foreign ministry. Something very interesting happened a few years back. There was a top Nigerian in the Commonwealth. And I'll mention his name, Professor Victor Ayeni. He was a director of the Commonwealth, and unceremoniously, he was sacked from his job. Nigeria could not come to his aid. We tried to come to his aid through the newspaper. You won't believe it. The Commonwealth contacted the Guardian and made sure they stopped us. Ultimately, he had to go to the tribunal, to the arbitration in London. And you know the question that was asked at the end of the day, the tribunal said, "Where is your country?" That's how can they visit this kind of thing on you? Which harks back to what Ambassador Joe Keshi said about the fact that over time the ministry has been weakened. I must say here that I was very stirred, moved by that subsection on Oriki, on my Oriki. And that is because, for those who know me, I grew up in Lagos, but I lost my father some 68 years ago. And you know what that means. Many of you were not even born then, you know. And he was an Egba man, and that brought up memories The Oriki fellow, thank you very, very much. It's a kind of playback to my original roots. And talking about my student, Bolaji Akeremi, who spoke about Nigeria, among other things, being a raw material republic. I think I cannot agree. I cannot but agree with him more. But the point is this. But the point really is this. This is the general trend about Nigeria, in the sense that from 1960 till date, Nigeria has been a producer of raw materials without value addition. And until we do this, we'll never be able to get ourselves right at the domestic level and at the global level. Because I listened to a lecture once by the Emir of Kano, Sanusi. He said, as you move up the value chain, you create more jobs. Which is why anytime I go to like, by the wielding sticks, stopping motorists collecting money. And I say it's because of that failure on our part to, as it were, add value to our raw materials. Which takes me back to a conference which I attended in Oxford several years ago. And there was a professor, a French professor, who was supposed to speak about what he called the threat potential to Nigeria. This was a conference where we had people like Ambassador Yoke, Kolade, Joyogu, Jide Oshitoko, notable Nigerians. I was expecting him to talk about Nigeria being threatened by France, being threatened by Francophone neighbors. I know what he said. He said the threat potential to Nigeria is Nigeria itself. I was stunned. I had to ask him. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he said what should constitute a state is not there. But that he quickly retreated. This French professor, he said, I don't know much about Nigeria anyway. He knew he had said too much. But the words remain with me, that the threat potential to Nigeria is Nigeria itself. How do we, for instance, how do we explain the shameless during the last elections, one way or the other, to Chatham House? You know, our presidential candidates, they all want to explain themselves. Responsible to London and other metropoles? Stays with me. There is no larger vision on the part of our elite. And it explains why, and I'm sure Ambassador, His Excellency, Kamfai will remember this. There was a memorable article in The Economist in which they were trying to say, how do we deal with Nigeria? And you know what The Economist said? The Economist said, close the toy shop. That was the title of the article. It said, close the toy shop. That's dealing with Nigerian elite is very easy. Just make sure you don't grant them visas, because their wives come here for shopping. They come here to do their hair. Their children are here. You can see the way they've reduced Nigeria, what Nigeria has been reduced to, which goes to show that in a way, Nigeria is helplessly locked into the international system. And this has happened a long time ago. Let me give you an example. People forget that if you look at all our literary icons, i.e., Wole Soyinka, Chinua Achebe, and J.P. Clark, go and look at the beginning of their respective careers. They all had one global fellowship or the other from the international system, which means the world out there, they have always been very smart to identify our brains and, of course, they try to more or less mold them. But for the fact that these geniuses, in their own respective rights, refuse to be molded, they would have just taken them over. Let me just give you another example, please, in terms of my own memories about the June 12th struggle. The day the Canadians left Nigeria, I was invited to the house of the director of the British Council. And if you heard what he said about Nigeria, about Canada, and about Britain, he made a comment, which I want to repeat here. He said, according to him, the Canadians can afford to stand on principle as regards Nigeria. Just decode that. What he was saying there was that, well, the other countries, they have other interests to pursue, okay? And as such, they cannot leave Nigeria the way Canada has left. He said, for the American ambassador, one of the American diplomats said, for instance, when the Canadians left, he said, our baggage in this country is too heavy that we cannot leave Nigeria. You can imagine. In saying all of this, of course, when he was talking about baggage, he was referring to the oil industry. And the point again here is that Nigeria, as I've argued on several platforms, does not have an oil industry. Nigeria is not an oil-producing country. Nigeria is a mere laid-back recipient of providential revenues. And nobody has ever developed on it. That education did not come through providence. That's at the micro level. It came through systematic planning from Loyola College, as in the case of Ambassador Keshi, from Christ School, as in the case of His Excellency Dr. Kayode, from Iroko Grammar School, as in the case of Bolaji Academy. So how can a nation then hope to develop on the basis of providential revenues? In the case of Nigeria, which is why some of our misguided compatriots and the rest of us, they refer to a sartorial gap. They call it resource control. Which resource? What do you control? We do not control any resource. That resource is being controlled metaphorically by Shell, which is why somebody has said that Shell is the Nigerian state, and the Nigerian state is a shell. Which is why it takes us again to what are the real indices of opposition in Nigeria, or opposition to Nigeria, or specifically opposition to Tinubu. The opposition is not in PDP. It is not in Labour Party or the rest of them. The opposition is out there in the global system, in which, for reasons best known to them and in their own interests, which are legitimate, they will not allow Nigeria to develop. And they will not want Nigeria to develop. And if I were in their shoes too, I will not want Nigeria to develop. Let me explain. You have 200 million consumers who are dependent on the international system for sustenance. That international system will not want us to just go away, to walk away like that. And we could see it in the case of the evolving reality and dynamics of Dangote refinery. The moment that refinery came on steam, some refineries abroad in Korea, in Rotterdam, they were being closed down. Now think of it. Widen the dynamics in terms of value addition. That if we succeed in doing value addition, in creating backward linkages, we are going to throw a lot of people out of jobs in the international system. And they will never allow that. In France, it was hosted by Total. And when I got to France, I discovered that what you see as Total is just a fraction. In a place as big as Unilag, is a research campus being run by Total. And there are some Nigerians working in that place. And they took us through a lot of courses. And I found that I came to the conclusion that a country that lacks variables like petrochemicals, like the steel industry, like power, can never develop. Which is why we have all kinds of distractions now on the domestic scene. Coalition, Natasha. These are not the issues. If we don't address these issues, we'll just remain where we are. Again, I want to speak about an aspect of myself, which somebody like Professor Eswala knows, which is that at the risk of projecting myself, one can never be too humble as regards scholarship. And I will explain that. Something happened to me in 1970 when I was in Form 4. I was in King's College, and I was one of the best students in the class. But something happened in 1970. The war ended, and then some of our students came back from Biafra. They disrupted that class in terms of merit. And I discovered that if you say you are brilliant, there'll be somebody else that is more brilliant. Which is why, we're in the profession of that harps on ego. And you think you are brilliant, you think you are better than the next person. When those boys came from Biafra, they disrupted the whole place. People like Eruchalu, Unwokike, Okafo. Till tomorrow, just Google the name Eruchalu. And what you see is somebody that stands on the brink of genius. So from that time, I became very, very humble that no matter how brilliant you think you are, there are other brilliant people out there. Which was why when I saw the CV of Omotola, I knew that we had to recruit him, because at the risk of letting down the side, Omotola's CV is better than mine. At the risk of letting down the side, Olaniyo's CV is better than mine. And I said, if we can get this kind of people in this place, they will help us to build the foyer of our dream. Let me just also fill in the blanks there. Somebody mentioned they said he was too good to be employed. The person in reference happens to be Dr. Sonny Folorunsho Kuku. Like Olatunji Darewura will say about Kuku, he said, Kuku stands on the brink of what he calls genius. But he couldn't get a job in the College of Medicine, University of Lagos. His teachers felt they had to oust him, and they ousted him. I was also ousted from University of Lagos anyway, under that kind of circumstance. But today, I'm happy that with Christ in the vessel, I've smiled at the storm. Which is why when somebody talked about the non-progressive forces in the Nigerian state, I think that was Professor Kayode Suola. This, in a way, speaks to my experience as Vice Chancellor. Our country is such that when we were trying to start the Faculty of Pharmacy, and when we went to the Faculty of Pharmacy, I was called in by one of the anti-graft agencies. According to them, they said, you started the Faculty of Pharmacy, and your wife, we must have cornered all the contracts for the equipment. I had to laugh. I said, no, we're not brought up that way. That we did not, that my wife was never involved with the contracts. And of course, they checked all the books, they checked all the records, and found that there was nothing like that. But that tells you something, that they just felt that, how can somebody start a Faculty of Pharmacy, a new faculty with very expensive equipment, and not have a hand in it? More so because I had a pharmacist in my bedroom. But that tells you the way Nigeria is. And of course, when I look back at my experience as Vice Chancellor, I always told people that I acquired another PhD. I acquired a PhD from the University of the Street. And this is because I'm saying this for the first time. Someone like Professor Eswala will know this. I've had to go through all the anti-graft agencies. And if you're a professor, you're an academic, and you have not gone through those portals, then I will say this, your education is not complete. And that is when you see Nigeria, in its naked form, you see what happens there. For instance, they said I undertook 74 projects running to billions, which means I must be very, very loaded. And they couldn't believe it, that it's just the way it is. But like I said, what it really means is that it's not just about the fact of corruption. You expect the next man to be corrupt. And I learned a lot. About corruption and about why Nigeria is corrupt. And I came to the conclusion that Nigeria is corrupt simply because, not because we were evil, but because there is shortage. There's a shortage of public goods. You walk into the office of the anti-graft agency, and the girls there are smiling at you. Because, as Kissinger himself said, he said, power is the ultimate aphrodisiac. In other words, they say this is an important man. You never know what you can get from him. And you only have to say how now, and that's it. So you can begin to see. The person who is supposed to investigate you is beginning to ask you that his cousin, his children, they need admission. And I said, what's happening? And I came to the conclusion that part of the problem is the shortage of critical public goods in the country. And to that extent, everybody is on the
Unfortunately, I think Prof dropped due to internet.
Unfortunately, and I'm sorry to our audience. I was tempted to ask Prof to round up, but as he was going, it was becoming too interesting to stop him. So, Toby, what do we?
It's back now, so we can just ask him to give his final club.
Okay.
It seems like a valedictory lecture already.
Yes, Prof. Prof, can you hear me, Prof?
He's muted, and that is
okay. Prof, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, let me just round up.
Oh, thank you, Prof. Thank you,
Let
Prof.
me just round up. Because corruption, the way I see it, is not the impediment to our development. Almost every social formation in the world has to contend with corruption, and yet they are developed. So what is the problem? The problem is that the elite, rather than just kind of simultaneously handle these two balls, they focus on only one ball. If you go and read the memoirs of Colin Powell, he talked about the corruption in the Pentagon, in the State Department, but they still manage to, as it were, focus on the ball. In our own case, there is no focus on the ball. It's just the grab mentality. I hope I've said enough. I hope I've said my mind, but I want to end this discourse by thanking everybody. At a point in time, given what I experienced when I was in Federal University, I nearly came to tears because I discovered that we are not really programmed for development. It's very easy for a vice chancellor to make money. Why? I grew up in Lagos. People came to me offering as much as 50 million each for honorary doctorates. But I said no. Instead, I gave a honorary doctorate to the former principal of Queen's College, who had virtually been forgotten. I gave one to that Islamic cleric in the north, who saved Christians from imminent death, from near imminent death. And I remember that I was told later that it was even His Excellency, Dr. Fayemi, who provided money for the man's transportation because we didn't really have the money. I gave a honorary doctorate. His inheritance. He took his inheritance to start a school in the rural wilds of Ondo State. And I was very, very happy about that. But this is what you find. It's all cash and carry. Once again, let me thank everybody. I feel very humbled. And the way you have honored me, God will also honor all of you in your respect in various ways. Thank you very much. And God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Prof. You've said a lot of things, especially for the younger colleagues, in the academy. We're super grateful with some of these insights that you've shared with us. We're happy to be celebrating you. And I think before I hand over the mic to Okoyemi, I must also say, with every sense of uh, you know, respect to the graduate research clinic. When they told me about this idea of wanting to celebrate Professor Soremekun, I was really super happy because we know that in our context, that is almost like an aberration because we tend to celebrate people that we know that they lack the character, they lack the history, but yet we still go ahead to celebrate them. So for young graduate scholars to again think about celebrating someone like Professor Shoemeku talks about that, optimism that Ambassador Aderemi, imagined. There is hope in Nigeria if young researchers, scholars can think to do what they've done this night. Well, Prof said that if you have a PhD and you've not gone to EFCC, your education is not complete. I think I'll be half-baked. I don't want to, get that education. But I would invite Okoyemi to give the vote of thanks. Thank you so much. Okoyemi, you have the floor.
Yes, I will be taking that, sir. Good evening, sir. My name is John Daniel, and I'll be doing that in place of Okwe. I've listened through, worked backdoor for the success of this event as well. And today is actually a very significant event, and we want to thank every contributor to Prof. Toby Oshodi himself. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time, for the consistency and helping out with everything. I admire the books behind you from onset, even till now while it is dark. Thank you so much, sir. We listened to Dr. Joel Keshi talk about a lot of things, and we understand from the things he said that is Nigeria economically and politically strong enough to compete for the seat of the Security Council as at now. We heard a lot of things, and one of the most important things we've heard about Professor Kayode Soremekun is humility, is ability to go all the way for his mentees. These were some of the things that struck out for me as a young researcher, and I'm like, wow, it's an opportunity to even be in this room. And I speak on behalf of everyone that this has been a most remarkable conversation. We would look forward to the continuity of this on our page, the GRC itself. We want to say thank you very much, sir, for even allowing us to honor you. While you call yourself the insulator, sir, thank you for allowing us to have the opportunity to have this event in honor of you. We are looking forward to furthering your legacy, to push ourselves, and to remember to pull others along as well. I am honored to be in this room. Thank you to everyone, to Prof. Kayode Eshula, to Professor Tola Odubajo, everyone that has made this a success. So in finality, we would like to admonish everyone, just like Prof. Kayode Soremekun, that we should believe and do everything based on merit. This is how we would change our society and Nigeria one step at a time, merit by merit, until we all come to the maturity of Nigeria's progress. Thank you so much, sir, on behalf of the GRC once again. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Toby, sir, any other thing?
I think you've captured everything. Only to appreciate our participants and all the panelists. I think for me, the panelists are just fantastic. How I wish we can, just document some of the key points they've talked about and just share that for those that are not on this call to also reflect about. But thank you so much. And to you guys, you just keep pushing. And I think Nigeria has hope with young scholars like you and us. Thank you.
John, can we take the group photograph? Can we ask everyone to put on their videos, please? So we have this.
Yes, can we take the group photograph right now? Please put on your camera with your smiling faces. Yes.
Hold on.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I can see the smiles coming in, but I still need like 90% more.
Hold on, though.
Yes, sir. Aha. My professors and doctors are turning on their camera. It's an honor.
Yo, on your photo. On
Then
put on group photograph.
Prof.
It's good to meet everyone again. Let me see.
Okay.
Let me see if you can see my face. So, John, good to meet everyone.
When shall those of us online, when shall we take our photograph with Soremekun? Yes, Professor.
Please, GRC team, please. I made a comment. I don't know if we can turn this to a magazine or something.
Yes, sir,
something that can be had. Yeah, something that can go and deal with, especially with Gen Z.
Yes.
We need to allow more people to get across with this platform. It's beautiful. It's interesting. Yeah.
The host should.
Congratulations, bro. Congratulations. Congratulations.
So, John, have you taken the snapshots?
Yes, sir, I have. I would like to take another one with my own.
The host should put on our cameras.
Okay, that's true. We can actually try that. But we don't know. It has to be subject to everyone's convenience, so we'll take another one.
No, the host has blocked our camera. Let him.
Yes, thank you, Doctor.
Anyway,
we're working on that already.
We should put on our cameras.
Yes, sir.
Yes, the host should put on our cameras because he's blocked it.
We should put on our cameras, Dr. Shodi.
And yes, Prof, you are okay like that. You're fine. Your camera is already
okay.
on. So yes, you're okay like
that.
Okay.
Let me sit down properly then. Thank you very much.
The host, please unmute our camera or whatever.
Working on the.
Okay.
We have more cameras.
Yeah.
Okay. Sir, I think we have it now.
Okay, have you taken enough?
Dr. B, yes, I have, sir.
All right, great.
All
So
right.
thank you. We'll leave the room open for anyone who wants to engage. Professor Soremekun, wishing well, whatever conversation and collaboration. That's what the JRC tries to foster. Thank you.
From my own end, I just want to say congratulations, Prof. This is a great privilege meeting you. I'm Moses Abolade, the Executive Director of Peace Education and Practice Network. And I just wish I had met you earlier, but I know it's not too late. I think we need more of this caliber of academicians, more and more of that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm very grateful for your comments.
Maybe I should just jump in. I think I'm the luckiest person here because I currently teach 2 courses with Prof, Professor Soremekun. So you can imagine if I'm going to class with an ancestor. So Prof, I thank you so much for the mentoring, for your humility, for your support, and for everything. It's actually a pleasure to have you at Lagos State University Department of Political Science, arguably the most powerful political science department in Nigeria, or maybe Africa, I'm not sure. So, but we are super grateful that you are, part of our faculty. Thank you.
International Affairs analyst helps us understand the relations America has with this part of the world.
It is easy to regard him as a lame duck president. And I'm not being pejorative here because I'm speaking in terms of one of the common terms in political science, that is a lame duck president. So to that extent, I just wondered what has he been doing all these years, such that in the context of injury time, he's now paying attention to Africa. So to that extent, I think he simply is on his way out, and he simply wants it to. He wants to put it. He wants it to be on record that at the point in time he did pay some attention to Africa. Even if he's doing that, as far as injury time bandwidth is concerned.
We've always seen that the relationship between Africa and the rest of the world, especially the West, has always been one on the receiving end and the other always expecting aid, one always giving and the other always expecting. Do you think that this would change over time?
Actually, let me begin by saying that your assertion, with due respect to your party, is a bit simplistic in the sense that Africa's relations to the world is grounded in other historical dynamics, and the donor-recipient relationship is only the latest of that kind of relationship. We are talking here of the years of slavery, we are talking of colonialism, and we are talking of neo-colonialism.
Now to our own
Thank you, Toby.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that short interview with Professor Soremekun. All right, so thank you all once again. And yes, we'll be releasing a communique on this, and we'll be sharing the recording. The session was live streamed on YouTube, so you can go back and replay and relive this great conversations we had today. Thank you.
That's very good.
Yes, sir.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Prof, congrats.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Prof, congrats.
Congratulations, Prof.
Oga, congratulations, sir.
He's muted.
Big congratulations. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah.
Congratulations, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm so grateful to everybody.